The Mannin Line with Andy Wint.
Pastor Mai, good afternoon. We're on Mannin Line, open line today through till 1 o'clock. Text 166 177, WhatsApp 166 177, but you may have to put 07624 in there, so we'll be in your contacts. Isn't that nice? Email studio@manxradio.com or call 66 1368, whatever's on your mind. Stu Peters says he hates going to meetings. Not long after the cabinet reshuffle, Michelle Haywood, MHK, appointed Minister for Infrastructure. Stu Peters, the middle MHK, resigned from his role within the department. He'd been a political member there for a couple of years, but says the new minister needs to be able to choose her own team. And we'll hear that later on. I want to go to the lines first of all, and Betty's on with us. Hi, Betty.
Hi, Andy. I just want to say two thank yous to different people. I'd like to thank Lucy Buxton, who's the CEO of the Deaf Society. Sorry, because she's always there when you need her.
Okay, and who else?
And I'd like to thank the men who climb up the telephone poles during the bad weather, because they do such a good job. And I think they should get danger money for it.
Oh, okay. Have you been helped recently by a man up a telegraph pole?
Yes. They're very good and very helpful. And I'd especially like to thank Ben, who came in and told me what was wrong and everything. And I just think it's amazing and awful that they have to go out in all this terrible weather, and they do a brilliant job.
Okay, well, look, we're more than happy to put that on the record. Anybody who climbs up a mast with it in this weather deserves a bit more money, I would imagine. I wouldn't tell the engineers who work for Manx Radio, because they regularly clamber up masts in the middle of winter for other people and for Manx Radio as well. But we appreciate the sentiment, Betty.
Just tell all of them, the ones who do the electricity and everything as well, but I'm especially grateful to the Manx Telecom engineers at the moment.
Okay, all right, appreciate it. Thanks, Betty.
Okay, thanks. Bye.
Good to hear from you. 9 minutes past 12. And I suppose we often take the public services, the essential or emergency services, for granted. And the people who turn out in the awful weather we've had recently. But the electricity, the MEA, the MUA, Manx Utilities, the people who clamber up masts and get stuff rewired and what have you, particularly in the north, because a lot of it is overhead cables. So all the best to them, and also to the Manx Telecom people. They used to call them linesmen, didn't they? So all the best to you. And also, let's not leave out all our essential and emergency services, so police, fire and rescue, ambulance, coast guard, lifeboats, hospital, care home, everybody at sea, all ships at sea. Thanks for that. Stu Peters then has chipped out of infrastructure, resigned from the department in a discussion on Manx forums. Stu Peters, who apparently is on Manx forums quite often, I don't know this, he ruled himself out of joining Comin as he hates going to meetings. John Moss had a word about this.
I think that the new minister and I have probably got fairly different political views, which would almost inevitably come into conflict. I also think that the new minister should have the right to immediately set up her own team of people. So it struck me as being the honourable thing to do to resign resign from DOI.
Well, you say in your email, and this will have caught people's eye, you don't like meetings. Isn't that what being an MHK is all about?
No, I hate meetings. I've always hated meetings.
But your constituents feel shortchanged that their MHK doesn't like meetings and sits down in a meeting thinking, I'd rather I wasn't here.
Well, John, I remember back at in the days at Manx Radio, meetings just become interminable talking shops. I'm an active sort of a person. I like to get things done rather than talk about getting things done.
But isn't it how business is done as an MHK?
Sadly, it is, and one has to go through that process. Doesn't mean to say that you've got to like it.
Do you feel that you are still a fully fledged MHK, or do you feel you might have to resign once you've made this statement?
That's an awful stretch. No, I don't think I'll have to resign.
You feel happy enough? You feel you're doing a job for your constituents?
Absolutely, yeah. And let's not forget that the job of an MHK is to represent their constituents primarily. The work of government comes on top of that.
Stu Peters, any thoughts on that? Well, he's got a point, hasn't he? Some meetings are interminably boring. I was once told, never go to a meeting that doesn't have an agenda. How many meetings do you go to that don't have agendas? All the chairmen are now standing up and saying, there must be an agenda. So what do you think about it? Stu Peters, of course, is always honest, brutally honest sometimes about that. What do you think about it? He's clear. I mean, to have to resign because you have a different position to the minister, is that valid? I mean, surely being in politics is to be able to disagree with people and often to persuade people of the validity of your own case. Anyway, have you got thoughts on it, particularly if you're a middle constituent? How do you feel about it? What do you think? Text, well, Stu will have a much freer diary, apparently. The new infrastructure minister said she was surprised she was offered the job. Michelle Haywood, MHK, elevated to Comin following that political reshuffle by the Chief Minister, Mr. Cannon. The Russian MHK was elected in 2021 last time, and this represents her first ministerial post. John Moss asked her if she had to take time before she said yes.
I did. I considered it for a while, but it's good for me to develop as a politician and to take a greater responsibility. I hope I can bring something to the department in terms of oversight and perspective and guidance.
You're the member actually who's famously put daffodils in potholes. Is that going to be top of your list?
Certainly from a constituency perspective, I've been championing the poor quality of the high street and wanting to get the scheme moving there. It's tied up at the moment in the fact that there's coal tar waste under the road. And so actually what I need to do is a piece of work with DEFA to work out what do we do with coal tar waste, and that actually unlocks about 15 different projects around the island. So I am working on that, and I've already had discussions with the DEFA minister, and we're looking forward to getting together and trying to unlock that problem.
You're going to have to get used to being stopped in the street all the time.
Yes, I know.
Has it happened yet?
No, but my email inbox filled up rapidly as of yesterday morning when the announcement was made. So anyone who's emailed me in the last 24 hours, I will get back to you. Eventually I'm working through the list, and I'm working with support in the department to actually do something to manage that.
Michelle Haywood, now you may remember she was on Mannin Line, I think it was last year, maybe the year before. We talked when Erie Stain was first mooted, and at that point they were saying, well, there may be wind turbines in the north or could be in the south. I think everybody knew they were going to be in the south. And when she was asked about what she thought about wind turbines, of course being a Russian MHK, she said, when I see wind turbines, I see a community ready to embrace the future. Well, we'll see, because she may have something to do with the wind turbines in the future. But any thoughts on this? Michelle Haywood is now our minister at the Department of Infrastructure. She's in charge, and she will be selecting her, certainly one member of the team, because Stu Peters has gone. Stu Peters is in the wrong job if he doesn't like meetings, says Texter 333. Interesting that Stu Peters is very vocal online and publicly about being a climate change denier, and the green agenda is nothing more than a money-making scheme for some, and that EVs aren't the future. In fact, they're a disaster for the environment, says PJ on 111. Why then has he signed off on his department spending a ridiculous amount of cash on a fleet of EVs? Amazing double standards are a true sign that he has no say in the department that he's a political member of. How to commit political suicide, says Paul 715C, not prepared to put in the hard yards. Basically, it's a metaphor, that is, by the way. Stu Peters is quite right. And don't forget, he hasn't had a humour bypass like some of them, says Liz. Well, if you got any thoughts, text, email, call and WhatsApp where this is concerned. Rob Callister, the Onken MHK, was on X last night and praised Stu Peters, saying, given the changes in the department over the weekend, I wouldn't be hanging around either. Infrastructure Minister Michelle Haywood gave the following response to Manx Radio in light of both what Mr Peters and Mr Callister said. She said, I'm saddened that Mr Peters has decided to resign from his post in DOI, as I would have valued his input to ensure some continuity as I get to grips with the new role. I wish him well in his much clearer diary now. He's not attending so many meetings. Unfortunately, that's a major part of the job and a critical part of developing good governance around decision-making. Mr Callister's comment that he wouldn't have hung around given the changes are unwarranted, given the history between us, that's Mr Callister and Michelle Haywood. Mr Callister can rest assured I won't be asking him to join my department. Seems fairly obvious, doesn't it? Right, any thoughts and more comments about what Stu's been doing? I read there was a Freedom of Information request that stated the possibility that government courts spent £4,600 last year on newspapers at £1.58. That's over 3,000 papers per year, 88 papers a week. Have I understood this right, says Tony. Not seen that Freedom of Information request, Tony, but I'd be interested to see it. At least Stu Peters has stepped down. Plenty of other MHKs, including the two from Castletown, have been so lazy they've not been members of any department for 2 years. Well, we mentioned this yesterday. Is not being a member of the department, is that a statement of principle? Or, because there's only 24 and there are a lot of roles to divvy up. So somebody's got to go in the roles, and presumably they knew that when they became MHKs. I mean, Tim Glover's quote was, I don't want to be a member of the government. I don't want to have any part in this administration. And he showed that when he instigated that no confidence vote. That's politics, and we're less than 2 years away from a general election. And Wilf's on now. Hi, Wilf.
Hi, just a very short one. Michelle Haywood has taken over from Tim Krukall, is that right?
Yeah, she has.
Right, okay. Now, Mr. Hooper asked Tim Krukall about what we do with electric cars. And, of course, now Tim Krukall, he doesn't have to answer that now. So it's up to Michelle Haywood. I wonder, can she tell us what we do with them, with dead electric cars?
Well, I mean, when you say dead ones, do you mean because they can reclaim the battery bit of it, can't they?
Well, I don't know. I haven't heard anything about anybody being able to handle any part of it on the Isle of Man.
Ah. So what happens to them? Presumably they get shipped off the island.
Well, I asked our two MHKs in Ramsey, and they didn't know. And I said, well, surely you should have found that out before you bought the first one. But then, that's what they do. They think they're doing a wonderful thing, the Green Party, but I'm afraid, I don't know what you do with these. They're supposed to be shipped off, and then when they get that the batteries are not good, it costs more for new batteries than a new car is worth. A new ordinary car, as I call it, the petrol or the diesel, you see. They cost far more to get new batteries on them, but there's nobody here that can do it. So it's got to be shipped away, so there's more cost.
Well, that's interesting.
I don't know.
Yeah, we'll try and find out, Wilf. I can't remember a straight answer on that.
Well, that's what I've been trying to get for, I don't know, probably a couple of years now, but nobody seems to know.
Right, okay.
But
okay.
I've got an answer for it, actually.
And what's Wilf's answer?
Well, my answer is, if we've got a dead one and somebody wants to get rid of it, we take it to the nearest disused quarry or whatever and put a match to it. And then the scrap man can come then and pick the bits up. And no harm to anybody then.
Oh,
we'll cause a bit of pollution for the time being, but then it's gone. It's finished.
I'm trying to figure out how big is the engine, because it's basically an electric motor in the EV, isn't it? So I wonder how...
Electric. The electric thing is only like a big electric motor. That's it. But the whole bottom of the car, of electric car,
yeah,
or more or less the whole bottom, is batteries. And nobody seems to be able to do anything with them here. We haven't got a specialist here. And I would have thought that's the first thing you do. Before you start buying these stupid things, then we get somebody that can handle it.
Okay.
But obviously, well, it's our government, isn't it?
Right. Well, we'll put that question out then if anybody knows. All right, Wilf. Thanks for calling, Wilf.
It. Right. All right.
Good to hear from you. 21 minutes past 12. There's the challenge from Wilf. What happens to EVs when they are sadly no longer of any use? What happens? Because obviously, regarding an internal combustion engine, well, there's scrap value in that. It's a big engine. Internal combustion engines are big. There's a lot of money in that. And there's a chassis and what have you. But as far as an EV is concerned, they're kind of a one-trick pony. I mean, it's just an electric motor and a battery, and everything else is bolted on around it. So if anybody knows, if you're the proud owner of an EV, is there a plan for when your EV is no longer functional? Are they dismantled over here? Is the battery recycled over here? Can anybody handle them over here? Or are they taken away? The whole financial model around the EVs seems to be in some doubt at the moment. I don't know whether you spotted the UK news, but Stellantis, the people who own Vauxhall, are closing their Luton plant, and they say that the EV quotas that are being put on manufacturers are now unsustainable. Volkswagen has said the same in Germany. Basically, if you don't hit the quotas, you get fined for every car that you sell, every internal combustion car that you sell. It could be up to, I think the fine's up to about 15,000 euros at one point. And a lot of the manufacturers are saying, look, it doesn't happen in China. They just build away there. But so we'll see. Note it, this is Wolfie who just said, Andy, our finances are under stress and our taxes have been increased. But why? The reason is the public sector is definitely out of control financially. Now, if ever an example were needed, it's the government's stupid active travel plan. This is Wolfie's word, by the way. Stupid active travel plan, which no one voted for and that's costing the Manx taxpayer millions. This is the active travel where they're aiming to get you out of a private vehicle and onto a bicycle or public transport. This is the active travel plan. To aid this stupid plan, government waste goes on. And the latest example is announcing an order for another 5 new double-decker buses, when we already have one of the most modern and perhaps underused bus fleets in the world. They are modern buses, aren't they, that we have? Now, this is totally unnecessary, and the tax increase is surely the start of more to come. So 5 new double-decker buses when we have a very modern fleet and not terribly used. You've heard in the past we've talked about public transport and how it needs to work, and if they do want us to go onto public transport, what's the best thing for it? You may, a couple of days ago, I was talking about EVs, and one of the best ways to get anything into any marketplace is to give the darn things away for free. And I mentioned, not entirely frivolously, that if you started giving away electric vehicles, then more people would use them, obviously, because they're free. And it's the same thing with public transport. Unless you make public transport comfortable, regular, warm, and free, then most people, if they have access to a private vehicle, will use that vehicle. You can it's the carrot and stick approach. Do you offer a carrot to people by making public transport very regular, from very early in the morning till after midnight, very warm, all the facilities on board, very safe? If you do that, then is that a better way of getting more people onto public transport rather than taxing private vehicles or hectoring people and saying, you need to be greener. How do we do? Stu Peters has stepped down. Many other MHKs, including the two from Castletown, were back on the subject of Mr. Morehouse and Mr. Glover again. Just a quick one. Don't set fire to any electric car. The emissions will be high and the fumes will kill you. So please don't set fire to an electric vehicle. There will be pollution and possibly deadly. Did you hear about the golden eagle killed by wind turbines in Scotland and the man who was killed by one that broke in Australia? CC, I didn't, but do send me a link to that. I'll take a look at it. It's all part of the WEF plan. World Economic Forum, that is. Davos and all that. You will have nothing and you will be happy, says 338. We've been reading 1984. There's a case, apparently, of scabies on the Isle of Man. We were warned a couple of weeks ago about scabies and the impact that it can have, but apparently it has taken a hold on the Isle of Man. And Manx Care are hoping to restart vaccinations for shingles. 3,000 people on the Isle of Man have been impacted by a delay in rolling out the shingles vaccine. It's not yet clear how the vaccine programme will be funded in the long term. We're back to money. It's hoped it's going to be restarted in January next year. Manx Care stopped providing the vaccination in April last year after a change in the vaccine recommended, and any leftover stock has now been used. The new vaccine basically costs more. It's down to money. In Keys this week, Health and Social Care Minister, the new one, Claire Christian, talked about it. Now, if you've... we've run out, basically, now, so, well, what's going to happen? With the Westminster government considering a bank holiday next year to mark 80 years since the end of hostilities of the Second World War, I'm hoping Manx schools will be educating pupils about this important conflict. Says Alan, my father was a volunteer with the Manx Regiment at the start of the war, and although he fought in many bloody battles, he was thankfully able to return to the Isle of Man following the surrender of the Nazis in Europe, after which I was born. But many of his comrades weren't so fortunate. I think it's an important history that should be taught in school. It'd be interesting to see whether or not we get that bank holiday next year. Instead of selling Lord Street flats, couldn't the flats be demolished but the bricks and any other materials salvaged to build proper houses for ordinary people? You need to ask some of the older Manx people if this is possible, says Victoria. We did have a word on what the Lord Street flats were made of, and when David Ashford was here, he said Lord Street flats were a temporary measure. They've lasted well for a temporary measure, haven't they? What were they actually built of? Right, text, email, call, got lots of messages to get through, including, I got told off yesterday because there were some messages I couldn't get to yesterday. Have all the shelves been filled now, particularly as the boat didn't go at the weekend? Lots of people saying that some of the supermarkets hadn't planned properly. We pay more tax here than people do in the UK. It's more expensive to live here. Food's more expensive, energy's more expensive, travel's more expensive, houses are more expensive. So how does the Manx government think they're going to attract professionals to the Isle of Man? It's just a dream. I'm a professional, qualified person. I'm leaving in a year or two after being here for 11 years. So maybe this notion of a low-tax jurisdiction is false, in that tax may be low, but everything else costs more. The figure that always used to be touted was 17%. Everything costs 17% more because of the haulage costs to get to the Isle of Man. Certainly, I think housing costs and house prices are probably more akin to the southeast of England than they are to the north of England. Air traffic control issues. The working situation at Ronaldsway is dire. Has been for years. 440 says in his opinion, or their opinion, shocking management for years at air traffic control. Well, we had the word yesterday that we're on 50%. 50%. We need 16. We have 8 air traffic controllers. But the good news is they're hiring a new manager.
Hello, Isle of Man. At Co-op, we believe it's wrong to lower prices on things you buy least. So we lower the prices on the things you buy most, as well as giving you other exclusive member benefits. Plus, we now deliver to the whole island, so great deals can be delivered to your doorstep. So join Co-op to become not just a member, but an owner and have your say on how we're run. Co-op, owned by you, right by you. £1 membership fee applies. See full T's and C's at coop.co.uk/terms.
Walk through the Christmas wonderland at Ramsey Garden Centre for a magical range of trees, decorations, unique gifts and much more, including the widest range of indoor and outdoor lights. Christmas at Ramsey Garden Centre, open 7 days a week.
Love shopping? Finding it difficult to get out and about? You'll love our Shop Mobility Buddies. It's a new incentive set up by Circa to help you get the best out of your Douglas shopping trip. From Monday to Friday, 10 a.m. till 4 p.m, we'll pair you up with a manual or powered wheelchair or mobility scooter, as well as a Shop Mobility Buddy to help with your shopping. For details, click circa.org.im. Sponsored by the Manx Lottery Trust as a delegated partner of the National Lottery Community Fund.
I wish I had a better savings account.
Did you hear about Skipton International's great rates for their savings?
No, tell me more.
Skipton, the Guernsey Bank, are currently offering a 4.75% AER fixed rate account maturing 14th November 2025 for deposits starting from £100,000.
Wow, that's a really good deal.
It's no wonder Skipton offers some of the best rates around.
For details of all Skipton savings products, call 01481 730 730 or visit skiptoninternational.com. It's time to switch to Skipton. No withdrawals allowed until maturity. Interest is paid annually and upon maturity. Skipton International is licensed to take deposits by the GFSC and is a participant in the Guernsey Banking Deposit Compensation Scheme. See dcs.gg.
The Isle of Man is known as the road racing capital of the world. But have you ever wondered what it truly takes for riders to make it here?
My old saying, which I live by, if you want it bad enough, you'll get it.
In the Journey to a Dream podcast, we dive into the untold stories about the determination, skill and passion that fuel these riders as they seek racing glory.
It must have been a nightmare to work with and live with or whatever, because that was literally the only thing going through my mind.
I still go down Bray Hill and you're going, how are we allowed to do this?
Journey to a Dream, brought to you by Kawasaki Insurance, available at motorsport.manxradio.com or your favourite podcast provider.
The Mannin Line with Andy Wint.
Pastor Mike, good afternoon. 27 minutes now before 1. Yes, it's been advertised that the Isle of Man Public Service careers, you can look at this on the website, on the government website, they're advertising for a new air traffic control manager, an ATS manager of air traffic control. It's a limited term appointment. It's been advertised, and I was just looking at some of the specifications that they want. It basically means, well, they're advertising for an air traffic control manager. Well, at the moment, the ATCO boss is the airport director, Mr. Jeff Pugh is the airport director. So if they're advertising for an air traffic control boss, does this mean... They've not kind of clarified, is Mr. Pugh becoming the airport director, or is he leaving? What's happening? So they're advertising for somebody to do the job that the current guy is also doubling up as the airport director. But they haven't advertised for an airport director. So it means that and also I was looking at the qualifications needed. And it said the interim air traffic manager of air traffic control to hold or to have held a recognised air traffic controller's licence or military equivalent, or an engineering qualification to HNC or suitable equivalent in an engineering, telecommunications, computer science or similar discipline. That means, once again, that the new air traffic boss won't necessarily need to be an experienced or, more significantly, a currently qualified ATC officer, as was the case before Mr. Pugh, whose I believe, is either Royal Navy or Fleet Air Arm, but he had no currently valid ATC licence when he was appointed to the role. So basically, the boss couldn't jump into the seat if there was a vacancy. even the holder of a currently valid military ATC qualification isn't legally qualified to work civilian air traffic control desks without extra training and conversion courses. If they take on anyone, including holders of HNCs, they'll still be down by a controller in terms of numbers. So they're hiring a new air traffic control boss, but not specifying that boss should be able to jump into the chair, as previously was the case before Mr. Pugh. Other air traffic control bosses had civilian licenses and could do that. Now we're 50%. This all feeds into the fact that there are problems at the airport. And it goes back to parking, it goes back to the fact that all the flights are concertinaed together, because we're only 50%. Now, everybody, the aviation industry is a linear industry. Lots of people all over the world talk to each other, and they know. So what must the aviation industry think of us when the Isle of Man, a proud jurisdiction with a very, very proud aviation record, is down 50% on our traffic controllers, and the new boss doesn't have to have a license to actually do the job? Well, text and call and email, lot of controllers don't stay at the airport because of this is 039's words, toxic management. Well, we don't know about toxic management, and that could be, that's a very subjective judgment. But the airport situation simply doesn't seem to be getting any better. Well, Michelle Hayward has got that on her list, with many other things, including what's going to happen to the condition of that road going through Port St Mary. The third consultation on the Laxey Wheel Visitor Hub is taking place this Friday, the 29th, at Laxey Sailing Club on Tent Road, 2 to 5:30 Friday afternoon. You're more than welcome to pitch up. The consultation offers the opportunity to share your views on the development of the new visitor hub. This is the one that was planned and knocked back because it looked like a porta cabin. Feedback's invited at the consultation in person, or you can email the head of properties at the Manx Museum, inquiries@mnh.im. But anyway, that's at the Sailing Club in Laxey, Tent Road, 2 to 5:30 on Friday. You can go and have your say about what you think. Now, I mentioned that shingles was causing a problem on the Isle of Man, and what did Claire Christian have to say? 3,000 people on the Isle of Man have been impacted by this delay in rolling out the new shingles at the new improved price. Health and Social Care Minister is Claire Christian. This is what she had to say in Keys.
In April 2023, Manx Care paused the shingles vaccination programme following the change to the recommended product being used and changed to eligibility and dose. Stocks of the previous vaccine became depleted, and the new product has a significantly higher cost. In April 2024, the department instructed that the programme be resumed, with the additional funding being allocated from the department's budget. Manx Care have been instructed to recommence the vaccination programme as soon as possible, and will be starting by early January at the latest.
I wonder if the Minister could just confirm then the Department of Health and Social Care funding for the shingles programme was in-year funding approved from memory, so there was funding available from the department this year. Does that mean that funding is also going to be provided for Manx Care to continue the shingles programme next year, or are they going to be expected to find the significantly increased cost out of their own existing budget, which we've already established is going to be inadequate?
Again, I can tell the Honourable Member that yes, it was the in-year funding has been approved, but looking forward for the future, I would obviously have to go back to Manx Care and obviously the DHSC, and we would work that out.
Has the Minister any data in terms of the number of people who were actually impacted by the suspension?
Approximately 3,000 people may have been impacted. However, just to caveat that not all patients would take up the offer of the vaccination, even if eligible, which I mentioned in my earlier remarks, that the Public Health believe the uptake will be around about 40%, which the assumptions have been based.
Claire Christian, MHK, they're responding to Albury, Castletown and Maloo MHK, Jason Morehouse, and former DHSC Minister Laurie Hooper about the rollout of the shingles vaccine. Shingles is horrible. I mean, it is awful. If you never get it, it may not sound like much, but I mean, shingles can be debilitating and extremely, extremely painful. So if that's affected you, and if you've got a word from your GP as to what's going to happen, then we'd appreciate a note, text, email, call and WhatsApp. It's Wednesday, which means after we finish on Mannin Line today, we're looking back at vintage Kelly's Eye with David Callister and Peter Kelly, and they're looking at a badly proportioned planning office. It's true. Peter Kelly talks about a badly proportioned planning office. Murray House, they're talking about in vintage Kelly's Eye today. During winter, says 535, is it not wise to keep a small stock of tinned food or long-life food as well as root vegetables in case there's bad weather? Rather than blame the supermarkets, households need to plan ahead and be aware of the weather forecast. You may not have all the family favourites, but it can make warming and filling meals without needing to go shopping. There's planning for you. Thank you, L, on 535. Can you start the day with Betty? Every day, Betty. I've never heard anybody more positive about overhead cables and poles. Thank you. Good to hear from you. Thank you, Richard. Nice to hear from you with that. I mentioned, thank you, Polly, who just said you talked about TV licenses. What was that all about? Well, the government's made the decision to extend the provision of free TV licenses for residents aged 75 or over to the end of 2026. The age-related TV licence fee concession (brackets number 2 close brackets) scheme 2020, which was set up to expire on the 31st of December this year, is now in place for an additional 2 years. So the decision to extend the provision of TV licences for people aged over 75 who are not in receipt of income support has been reached in order to provide certainty for households. Separately, pensioners aged 75 or over who get income support will continue to receive free TV licences under a BBC concession. The BBC's Royal Charter is due to expire at the end of 2027, and Treasury will contact the BBC to ask for details of their future policies while monitoring any further developments. Nobody's yet told me, by the way, where we get rid of electric vehicles on the Isle of Man. I mean, if you're in the business, if you sell electric vehicles or you bought one, genuinely, what is the plan as to how you get rid of the thing? What happens to it and how long do they last? I mean, they always make it sound fairly painless, the fact that you can take the batteries out and replace the batteries. Is it that easy? Is it costly? If it is costly, who picks up the cost? Is it the user? Is it the manufacturer of the vehicle? Is it the garage in the middle? What happens to electric vehicles? If you can afford it, get the shingles vaccine privately. Because shingles is not nice, says 223. Good advice. I mean, if you have the money to do that. I dread to imagine what the Isle of Man's going to be like at the end of the next administration, possibly a privatised health service, unaffordable energy cost and rates, and a reduced workforce, says G. On the bright side, thank you, G. Don't worry about the airport. I'm sure Michelle Haywood will get it sorted, but early in her appointment has shown her intentions to an interview openly admitting she'll sort out the Daffodil Road in Port St Mary. Mr Cannon needs to have a word. They need to reflect... Stu Peters needs to reflect on what being an MHK is. They're supposed to be looking after the interests of the whole island, not their self-promotional interest to make sure they get elected. Well, you can try that with MHKs, but remember they get elected by constituency, and you need to serve that constituency. But then again, 572, you're more than welcome to stand as an MHK. I'm sure they'd appreciate it. And I've got a message from Flo. Thank you, Florence, who said, you haven't mentioned the Castletown situation. The Castletown situation is there's going to be a public meeting on the 28th, tomorrow, regarding the proposal to permanently close Castletown Square to vehicles. It's being progressed without any consultation. Castletown commissioners have refused to consult with any businesses or residents, so there's going to be a meeting tomorrow. It's going to be meeting tomorrow. And remember, they talked about former politicians and how former politicians didn't really stack up in their opinion. Richard Ronan and Tony Brown, never mind former politician, former Chief Minister Tony Brown, said they've tried to meet with Castletown commissioners to find out why they're making the decision and believe there's no justification. So, Richard Ronan and Tony Brown on the meeting tomorrow.
I would say that we didn't want a public meeting to start with. I think what we wanted initially was to talk and have a conversation with the commissioners. Unfortunately, that wasn't forthcoming, which has now led us to the situation where we've had to call a public meeting to try and get people's opinion, businesses' opinion, about the closure of the Market Square during the winter months.
And I think you have to take the point, we did try very much to get a meeting with the commissioners to get an understanding of what's going on, why they feel this is the way to do it, and importantly to say explain what you're doing and what you see is the way forward. And they've consistently refused to do that with the traders. They've consistently refused to consult with the public. We endeavoured to get a meeting so we could in depth discuss with them how they got to where they are and what can be done and maybe how we can help. Both have experience in dealing with these issues, and I think the difficulty that we have and the public have, certainly the majority of the public, is understanding how they've come to this decision and why, and how are they going to make it work for the benefit of the whole town. And that seems to be missing, which is why we got together and said, let's see if we can find out what's going on and how can we help. Being rebuffed all the time for any meetings we find quite hard to understand.
I think it's fair to say as well that we're not opposed to the commissioners making decisions to shut in the winter. What we want to understand is why these decisions have been made. Is there a plan? How have you come about it? Who have you consulted with? And the square as it's built now was an absolute compromise, being led by people who are going to be influenced by a new square being formed. And that's how it was made. It was made to be a flexible approach for the summer, for the winter, to be able to shut the square at ease. I appreciate, and I said this recently as well in an interview, the trading conditions have changed in the last 10 years. To make the decision the commissioners have made and having the lack of consultation and meetings with the relevant bodies is such a shame. And I think now where we are, there's obviously a disconnect. I would urge the commissioners now to seriously think about suspending this winter temporary closure to March and draw up plans, because I know there isn't any plans. It's an idea from within the commissioner's office, and that idea hasn't really any substance of why.
Richard Ronan, former MHK, Tony Brown, former MHK, Chief Minister and former Commissioner as well. So that's the meeting tomorrow. Have you got any thoughts on it? Are you going to go to the meeting? It's at where are we? It's at let's see, Morton Hall, I believe it is. Is it Morton Hall in Castletown? 7:30. Just opposite the sidings. So you're more than welcome to go there, supporter, opposer, or just if you're interested on what's going on and why it's been made. Captain of the parish, Paul Costain, is chairing the meeting. It's on tomorrow, and they'd like to see you there. 7:30 p.m. it starts.
Plum Master, we're plumbers shop. For supplies, we've got the lot. Ramsey Douglas, come on down. Plum Master, the best around. Gas boilers, pipes and taps. Bathroom fittings, stylish rads. Plum Master have all in store and deliver to your door.
For trade and DIY plumbing supplies, visit Plum Master at Haldane Fisher in Douglas and Ramsey. Plum Master, your local, reliable, competitive plumbing supplier.
Athol Garage in Ballasalla is more than a Nissan authorised repair centre. Their team of highly factory-trained and experienced technicians will service and repair any make and model with dedicated aftercare too. With Athol, you get a competitive fixed-price menu and a courtesy car if needed. Pity this driver didn't know that.
Oh, great! I told you to go to Athol!
Athol, a garage to swear by, not swear at. Book now at athol.im or call the A-team, 820082.
Construction waste today.
Tells recycle for another day.
A builder skip or two.
Tells Skips will bring to you.
At Tells Skip Hire and Waste Disposal in Snugborough, you only pay for the waste you bring. For waste disposal and skips, give us a call on 677 137. That's 677 137. Visit Tells today or find Tells Limited on Facebook.
Call Tells Skips today.
677 137.
Dear Santa, this Christmas I would like more customers and more sales, please. I have been very good.
There are more reliable ways to make sure your business gets what it needs this winter. At Manx Radio, we'll create tailor-made advertising solutions to get you the results you want over the festive season and into the new year. Call our friendly sales team now on 682620 and give your business a really happy Christmas and New Year with the nation station Manx Radio.
Can I have a new bike too?
No, buy your own.
Oh.
This Christmas, we're spreading the festive cheer and championing local businesses by encouraging you to shop local. Here at Manx Radio, we're teaming up with Love Manx, who are running a Shop Local Christmas campaign to give you the chance to win a £100 voucher to spend at any independent local business. To win, text us now on 166 and tell us your favourite local business or producer and what festive goodies are catching your eye this year. And we'll announce the winner on this week's Feel Good Friday from 3 o'clock. Think local first this Christmas with Love Manx and your nation station, Manx Radio.
The Mannin Line with Andy Wint.
Oh, and regarding the Castletown meeting tomorrow, I think John Kringle's going to be there, former chair of Castletown Commissioners, alongside Richard Ronan and Tony Brown. We wait to see what happens. The Isle of Man is wonderful. The only problem is it's full of moaners, says Steve. I'm glad you're not amongst them. Thank you. I've just been thinking about the parking issue in Castletown Square, says 623. I've had a connection with Castletown for 34 years, and the current crop of commissioners is the most ineffective I've known in my adult lifetime, says James. Well, you could stand, James, couldn't you? There is increasing talk about UK farmers going on strike. A few days bad weather hit our supermarket food stocks. Yet there's still no mention by DEFRA of any contingencies to minimise food shortages, says G. Apart from Tesco and the Co-op, most shops are either empty or for sale in Castletown, says John. What do we do about it then? How do we get out of this regarding Castletown? What to do with old batteries is why Elon Musk created SpaceX. If you look closely, every time his big heavy rocket is launched, it's there to dump a load of old Tesla batteries in space. It always comes out back without them. Is that so, You're not on the inside, are you, with Elon Musk and SpaceX? What to do with old batteries? Well, more people are saying that really you shouldn't really buy an electric vehicle. What you need to do is lease one. Then it's down to the importer to dispose of the vehicle when you're finished with it, which means that they have to dispose of it responsibly, says Brian. I'd just like to say very brave on Mr. Peters to make his comment and broadcast it, his opinion, and that's how he feels. I'm sure a lot of other people take it on a political road, thinking that you can't go to meetings. It's not about doing a 10 or 12 hour day. It's a bit misleading, says Nigel. Doesn't a salary of over £80,000 a year offset the struggle to having to attend meetings? Good job Stu Peters wasn't asked to be the Minister for Health, as Manxcare have meetings about meetings about meetings. In fact, they have more meetings than they have plasters. The good thing, with Stu Peters gone, maybe we'll see the horse tramway completed and other Manx heritage run by DOI get back on its feet now he's gone. Cheers, says Will. Thank you, Will. And still nobody has said if it's them on the Isle of Man who has won this £177 million national lottery. Oh, it's Euro Millions, wasn't it? 177 million. If it is you, by the way, then well, you know. If you want to get in touch out of hours, email manninline@manxradio.com. The answer phone is 682 631. And Mannin Line's back tomorrow with another open line. Lots of messages, including somebody talking about private healthcare and whether it's going to happen on the Isle of Man. We'll get to that tomorrow. Thanks to Chris Clerk on the phones today.
WINT. 60 years serving you as the nation station. This is Manx Radio.
Kelly's Eye, brought to you by Ellis Brown Architects.
Peter, what's Kelly's Eye looking at today?
Today, David, I suppose I'm looking at two Kelly's Eyes.
You're looking at those circular windows at the top of these rather tall columns.
That's right. Well done. We've got a building with two lots of pediments on the front, which are all in plastic or fiberglass. And within the pediment, that's that triangular bit at the top, there's a circular window which has neither rhyme nor reason. In reality, you wouldn't get that in a classical building. You'd get a carving crest or something. The capitals at the top are very much sort of just done out of the moulding.
And they're white marble, I suppose.
Well, no, they're white fiberglass, and I'm sure somewhere somebody's tried to set fire to them. There's a bit where you can see inside, sort of a foam. And they're on a rather large building, and it's all very badly proportioned. And it's the planning office. It's been an attempt to give an old look to a modern building, and
it hasn't come off, you're saying?
It hasn't come off, and as you can see now, some of these columns on the way up are going in and out. There's been a bit of movement on them, and lots of staining coming out of them.
It's called Murray House, so who was Murray, do we know?
Well, next to the General Registry was a cement-rendered building, like a double-fronted boarding house, which government occupied, and if you can really remember that far back, the Harbour Board, this was running all the harbours from here in the middle of Douglas. Harbour Board on the ground floor, and local government board were above them. Their drawing office and their rents office and all what were squeezed into this building. So in fact, when it was taken over, I understand some sort of ballot or something took place. I remember the late Mike Savage saying that it had been decided by those who worked in here to emulate the other Murray House, and so the name Murray came forward. Right. Murrays themselves originally, of course, were the Duke of Athol's family, and I presume
taken from that.
It's taken from that. I remember once standing here with the Civic Trust assessor, and with the then planning officer, commenting on the building, and the then planning officer said, but of course, it wasn't a government building, we didn't design it. To which I responded, but who approved it?
Yes.
Many of the most iconic buildings around the island have been designed by Ellis Brown Architects. Keep up with Ellis Brown today on Facebook or via ellisbrown.in.
Part of island life for 60 years. This is your Manx Radio.